All right, welcome back to another episode of Financially Irresponsible. As always, I want to thank you guys for tuning back in. It definitely is a labor of love for me to show up every day and do this work. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. For the first time, I have a guest with me, and so we're going to go into kind of deconstructing the unlearning of bad habits. And so today's guest is Dewane Mutunga.
What's going on, bro? How you feeling?
What's going on? I appreciate that you came up.
Absolutely.
Considerable distance to get here.
Hey, listen, we had a conversation about collaborating and the opportunity presented itself. So I just wanted to make sure that we followed through on what we spoke about.
Yes, sir. So tell the audience a little bit about you, your background, and kind of your area of expertise.
Cool. So my name is Dewane Mutunga. I am a proud kid from the Bronx, New York. In this season, I operate as a management consultant, executive coach, performance coach for executives, in the capacity of sort of an organizational psychologist. I'm the host of the Human Behavior Mastery podcast on a Social Proof network. And really my work is around bringing people a sense of self-awareness, but also working with individuals and teams to allow us to use our differences to make a difference.
Well, that's amazing work. I know we connected offline and we talked about some of that background. Shout out to New York, shout out to the Bronx.
Absolutely.
But I really want to focus this episode on this idea of psychology. Has been a theme for this show, particularly as it relates to our money habits and the unlearning, the process of unlearning. So talk a little bit about that. How much more difficult is it to unlearn something that you've already learned?
Yeah, it's really difficult. So for context, a person on average has about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And so of those 60 or 70,000 thoughts, 95% of them are repetitive, and then 80% of those thoughts are negative. Right, because our brain is designed for us to keep us safe, to stay away from risk. So one, it's important to understand that your brain is not functioning to help you thrive, it's helping you survive. So it's keeping you safe. And so if your natural programming, if the repetitive thoughts are predominantly negative, you have a very small window to be intentional and deliberate about breaking habits that don't serve you. So of the 24 hours, humans are on average only conscious of their thoughts and thinking for about an hour and a half. So you sleep 8 hours, you got 16 hours, and then you're only conscious of your thoughts for an hour and a half. So you have a very tight window from which to do this unlearn and do this work that is really deliberate practice and intention work.
Right. And it sounds like for the most part, we spend our time on autopilot. So as you discussed, right, most of our thoughts unconsciously are just kind of happening in the background. And so when we talk about that small window of time where we can be intentional about our thoughts, what do you notice, recommend, suggest, etc., around optimizing that time to create change?
So the very first thing I would say is you want to create a sense of stillness. You want to get grounded. That sense of stillness is going to allow you to become the observer of yourself. So the first thing is to become self-aware and understand that you are not your thoughts and you are not your behavior. And so you eventually get to a point where you're able to separate your consciousness from the programming that you've received from friends, family, school, whatever. And once you see that there is some separation between the two, now you're able to be intentional about choosing what you want to engage with, right? So everything that occurs is neutral. Everything is a neutral occurrence. And we have the power of choice and choosing how we want to interpret what's happening.
Yep.
So essentially, again, the first thing I would do is tell people to get grounded, whether it's through meditation, it's through journaling, but you want to get still so that you can take inventory of what is coming up for you in a given moment. Because from that moment of stillness, we're able to recognize patterns and then remove what's not serving us and then choosing what is for us. And then replacing what's not serving us with things that are healthy.
For sure. And for those of you guys who are returning viewers, this is familiar content, right? We talked about financial anxiety, and we talked about acknowledging your safety in that moment. We talked about being mindful, being still. And so as we hear kind of a repetition around ways to disengage from the day-to-day and the unconscious programming that we have that kind of exists in autopilot, we're underscoring and emphasizing the importance of taking that time to be still, to journal, to meditate, to pray, whatever it is that you do, to focus on detaching yourself from the experiences or the things that are happening to you, so that you can be more intentional about moving into controlling outcomes as opposed to letting things happen. So going back to this topic of unlearning, because it's really fascinating to me, this idea. Most people focus on learning, right? Acquiring new skills, acquiring new ideas, etc., particularly in the realm of money. So you have a lot of people who are interested in investing, whether that be in the stock market, real estate. You have people who are studying how to make money. And then, a small subset of population who are focused on how do you maintain that money. But the unlearning, I think, is the most valuable when we talk about things like financial trauma. We talk about these behaviors or these patterns that are passed down that sometimes we might call generational curses, that are really just generational patterns or ideas that are being passed down that we perpetuate over and over again. So when we talk about unlearning, what is, outside of recognizing your safety and understanding how the brain works, I don't want to say against you, but against, to your point, thriving, what can somebody do to unlearn an undesirable behavior or pattern? And what do you recommend around that process of replacement?
Right. So I think the very first thing is, well, what I like to do is I like to approach things from a place of seeking to understand. Right. So I like to remain in the question. I always like to go through this process of discovery. So I want to ask questions. Well, the first thing is to understand that behavior is a function of identity. So whatever you're doing that because it is a reflection of who you identify as. And so if, let's say, I have bad spending habits, then there's something that I believe about myself or that I identify with that is having me acting this way. So I need to then isolate the behavior and go, well, where does this come from? Like, why did I do this? So you did this because you believe something. And where does that belief come from?
Let's stay with identity for a second, because a lot of the work that I do focuses on the Black community specifically.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about identity, is that, and you kind of answered this, but I just kind of want you to go deeper, is that a reflection of what other people believe about you, or more so a reflection of what you believe about yourself?
I think it is, well, part of what I study is behaviorism, right? So how an environment influences our behavior. And so an environment is going to change you before you change the environment. And especially when you're growing up in an environment, those foundational years, those first 7 years, you're just picking things up. You don't even really understand the rhyme or reason behind it, but you're embracing the ideology. And so you can believe yourself to be something that either doesn't actually fit you or doesn't serve you. Right. So a lot of us have these self-deprecating ideas and concepts that don't serve who we are and really aren't in alignment with our goals. So we have financial goals that don't match who we are, our behavior. And so it's really getting to the point where you can align all three of those things before you'll actually start to see yourself make progress.
Yeah. You said something I want to, I want you to repeat. You said your environment is going to change you before you change your environment.
Yeah.
They have a lot of ambitious people who feel like, you know, they've gained this knowledge, they've gained this experience, maybe they've developed an expertise, and they're going to go and change the world because that's their mission.
Right.
What do you have to say to those people?
The people who
want to be Superman, who want to go into marginalized communities and change outcomes based off of their vantage point or what they view about themselves or what they believe about themselves, and what maybe other members of their community are capable of.
Everything starts with mindset, right? And I think it's important to understand that awareness breeds choice. So you can't choose something that you're not aware of, right? The other thing is that understanding precedes acceptance. So a person can't accept a concept that they don't understand. They can't accept themselves if they don't understand themselves. So you have to start with education, and it takes time. So you have generations of things being passed down. Money don't grow on trees, or I had to work hard, or just the idea of trading time for money.
Yep.
These are things that are passed down, ingrained in, right? I remember my father would shut the kitchen down at 8 o'clock as a way to, preserve food or us not. So those are things that you just so now you may develop some idiosyncrasy around food, or wanting to spend extravagantly on food, not realizing that it came from something that happened when you were a kid or something that you were growing up with.
Right.
And so I think it's important for us to look at our perspective, the lens with which we view money and the concepts of money and the purpose of money.
Yeah. And I've shared this before, but most of the beliefs that we have about money are pretty cemented by the time we're at age 7. So as you talked about unconsciously consuming just patterns and beliefs and ideas and observations about what your family is doing or what other members of your community is doing, by the time you start earning your income on your own, you're already programmed for at least a decade, maybe two decades of programming that you then have to undo. And so, there's a lot that you said there. There's becoming aware, there's understanding both yourself and these concepts. There is education, and there's time. You talked about the amount of time. And so there are a lot of ambitious people. I'd like to say that I'm one of them, right? There are a lot of ambitious people who want to go out into their communities and change behaviors based off of where they've graduated to, right? The realization that they have experienced. But what it sounds like you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, there needs to be an equal level of understanding that maybe the people that they're looking to serve are not ready for the message that they want to deliver.
Yeah. And in order for you to change behavior, you have to change the way people view themselves. And in order to change the way people view themselves, you have to create space. For one, you have to be married to the long-term mission of the work. It is very difficult to change someone's mind, so you have to create space and then invite people into that space. And that takes investment and relationship and building and being consistent and showing up. And once the person sees what's possible, now they will start to embark on this self-discovery journey of asking questions on, well, what if I did this, right? What if we didn't work just to pay bills, or we worked to save money, but we thought about investing money? Or what if we changed our perspective around the purpose of money? Right? Like, what if we looked at money and looked at its purpose as $1's one and only job is to go make another $1. And we went from that perspective. So I think it takes investment in community. It takes patience. You got to have a heart for this,
Yeah.
for real, and know that you're going to be playing a long game, because habit change and habit formation is something that takes time, right? There's a study that shows that it can take anywhere from 21 days to 254 days for a person to develop a new habit through something called habit stacking. So when you want to create a new habit, the easiest way to sort of program that is to attach it to something that you already do, even if you're redirecting poor behavior. But in order for you to buy into the behavior, you have to buy into the mindset, and you have to believe that you're the type of person who can execute and do this. So it really takes a lot of work, a lot of repetition to get into the mindset of the people, to get them to believe and see what's possible before they choose it.
Yeah, that that's super important. Shifting the spotlight from the practitioner to the subject, right? What do you have to say about individuals who expect this overnight success to occur, right? Maybe they hire a coach, maybe they buy a course, they read a book, and they feel like they're gonna get rich tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be hopeful, but the chances of overnight success is very slim to none. And I would invite people to really invest in the process of learning and educating yourself around basic personal finance, financial literacy, learning the language, learning how the dots connect, learning and understanding the markets, learning how everything from a budget to a trust to how wealth is transferred, right? You have to be committed to the process of it.
Yeah.
This is not something that's going to happen overnight. So I would say you gotta treat this like almost like a bamboo tree, right? They say it takes what, like 5 years for it to take root, and then once it sprouts, it kind of shoots up overnight. So there's this culmination, this cumulative learning and knowledge, and then there's this point where you break through and everything sort of comes together. But you have to, nobody knows when that is.
Right.
But you being in an environment, surrounding yourself with people who also are interested in this journey of financial literacy, economic empowerment, it's going to speed up the learning curve. And then we start to get into group economics and, you know.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is community.
Yep.
I'm hearing that practitioners need to be upfront about setting expectations. And I'm hearing that the subject of these practitioners, whether it's somebody who's hiring a coach, somebody who's hiring a financial therapist, somebody who is working with a financial counselor, needs to commit to the long-term journey and not just the one session that they might pay for, or the bundle of sessions that are often sold, right? As, you know, we see on social media, like, buy my course, buy my product. The practitioner and the subject need to be on the same page in terms of this is an ongoing journey that most definitely will exist beyond the terms of what our relationship looks like.
Yeah, I mean, the harsh reality of it, and I don't know any other way to say it. Two things. One, nobody cares. Whatever excuse you have for why it's not happening, or what did happen, or should have happened, it may not be your fault, but it's your problem. And it's your problem, right? And the other thing is nobody's coming to save you.
Yes.
So nobody's gonna, I mean, everybody's dealing with something, and people are most invested in what they have going on. So you have to be diligent and be committed and understand that if it's gonna look different for yourself, let alone your family or future generations, if it's gonna look different, it's gonna be because you made it happen. And so it's the harsh reality, but no president, no government, no mayor, no job is going to save you, you know, marrying this person or being friends with, there are no promises and no guarantees. So you really got to adopt the mentality and have the understanding, like, don't be waiting for nobody to give you a handout, right? If somebody does do something for you, it's a blessing. but you have to put the work in for yourself because nobody's going to care about it more than you care about it for yourself.
Yeah. And you talked about habit stacking. Can you give an example or something that somebody watching this right now can take away as it relates to improving their relationship with their finances?
Right. So I can give an example. I'll give an example that I've done personally, and then I'll try to give an example that's related specifically to money, if that's okay. So I was struggling with drinking water. I would, sugar is an addiction, drinking sugary drinks. So one of the things that I did, I realized my path to my refrigerator. So I would walk through, I would have to pass the kitchen table, and then I would go in the fridge. And by the time I got to the fridge, there was sugary drinks in there that I shouldn't have been drinking. Stuff that my kids drink, whatever the reason. So what I did was, to encourage myself to drink more water, I would leave the water on the kitchen table that I had to pass, making it more visible and removing the friction from me getting the water. So what I noticed over time was, before I got to the refrigerator, I would grab a water. And then I would reward myself, right? I'm like, oh, there's the dopamine reward system goes off. And now it increases your likelihood of doing it again. Now I'm drinking a gallon of water a day. Now, when it comes to money, you can do something where you can set up that money is automatically sent to a savings account, an investment account, or if you want to be intentional and deliberate, this is a little more advanced, you can make sure, right, almost like a conditional. When I get paid, I send X amount to this account. If you need to set an alarm, set a calendar invite to yourself, whatever it is, but do something that prompts you to take action. And over time, if you stay consistent with it, and you may drop the ball, but you keep doing it consistently over time, and you'll notice that you'll start doing it on autopilot.
Awesome. Yeah. A lot of these concepts I've touched on in previous episodes, and it's really refreshing to hear these things repeated back to me and validating some of these ideas and these strategies. So I talk about a time period where I was going to work and I was stopping at Starbucks every day, and I wanted to save some money. So instead of spending $5 on this hot beverage every morning, I identified that the stimulus was going to work. Mm-hmm. The reward was the warm beverage, but the negative outcome was me spending the money. So what I would do is I would take the $5, I would buy a box of black tea, and so on my way to work, stimulus, I want a hot beverage, replace the Starbucks drink with a cup of hot tea. Good. And then I would still transfer the money that I would spend on the Starbucks into an account. So I'm spending the money, but I'm not spending it. I'm saving it.
I actually used to do something. I stopped doing it more recently, but I used to do this where whatever money, like if I wanted to buy something, I would reward myself for being disciplined, right? The way dopamine works with negative behavior and positive behavior through conditioning. That's why we have bad habits, right? But if you want to reinforce and create something positive, whenever I wanted to buy something, I'm a recovering sneakerhead, so I might have wanted to buy some Jordans or something. Whatever I would have spent on this thing that I had no business doing, if I practiced restraint and I didn't buy it, I would reward myself by putting that money in an investment account.
Nice.
And I would keep all of the accounts separate and make it very difficult for me to access the account, because the more friction you put in the way, the more it deters you from actually going to practice something. So if you want to break a habit, create friction. And if you want to encourage a habit, you want to remove friction.
Awesome. And we are at time. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and Dewane, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise.
Absolutely.
You made quite the trip for us to have this conversation, and I think the highlight of this conversation for me is just the reaffirming of things that have been already said. So thank you, and this has been another episode of Financially Irresponsible. We hope to see you in the next episode, and we'll see you next time.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.
I'm your host, Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week, if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the cliffs with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time.